We're going to talk about the incredible extensible PSObject, and we're going to see just how many typos this slide deck has. First, of course, we have to thank our sponsors. Thank you, sponsors. We've even got a few sponsors in this room, so thank Jane Street in particular. If we have anybody from Chocolatey, raise your hand. Okay, moving on. Who am I? Well, I'm James Brundage from Start Automating. I'm a pretty prolific programmer. I've been doing PowerShell for a very long time. I was actually lucky enough to be on the PowerShell team between 2006 and 2010, aka PowerShell v2 and v3. So the good foundational PowerShell that you still use every day. I'm biased. I'm going to be a bit of a PowerShell innovator until the day I die. At least, that's the hope, the dream. I love stretching the capabilities of the language, and I love finding amazing things that it can do. And this is hopefully a pretty high-level talk into one aspect of those amazing things. And of course, I love sharing it with all of you. Like, it's not incredibly cool if I just hoard all the good tricks that I figure out over time. Beyond that, to be clear about all of these things, these are language capabilities of PowerShell. I discover them in the same sort of way that Columbus discovers America. Too soon? Today we're going to be here to talk about PowerShell objects, specifically why they're really amazing. See, PowerShell has these amazing objects. It has a much more complicated, cool concept of an object than most languages have. PowerShell objects can do things few languages can do. They possess amazing abilities. For one, properties can be named anything. If you're working in C#, you have a very finite number of characters that you can use to name your properties. You cannot, for instance, have a property named a URL. Totally illegal in PowerShell. Types can also be named anything. Again, if you're in classic C# land, you have a finite number of characters that you can use to describe a type name. Not so in PowerShell. I can describe a type name using any sequence I'd like. So let's learn a few tricks. First, stretching instances. This is one that you probably already do, but might not think of by that name. First up, you got to understand that every object, almost, in PowerShell is a PSObject. That's just, if you look at a given thing, it's going to be a PSObject in PowerShell. You're going to be able to interact with it and extend it. This means we can extend almost any object that .NET has. Anything that we run across naturally, we can add more to it. This means if it doesn't have a feature we want, we can add it. One of my favorite use cases for this is what I call the whose ID is it anyway problem. Raise your hand if you've gotten back an object that just has an ID property. Then you need to go talk to something else that needs to know it was a specific kind of ID. Right? Well, you can just create an alias property of specific kind of ID to ID, just lightly extend the object, and then things just work. Can't do that in most languages. In fact, I don't know of another language off the top of my head that has something like an alias property. You might have seen the code you'll use to this sort of thing before. Something pipe to add member. Raise your hand if you've used add member. Congratulations, you're already extending PowerShell objects. Most languages don't have an add member. And furthermore, most languages can't add member. Technically, you can add members in JavaScript, but that's just part of how the language works there, and it's one of a few languages that work that way, PowerShell being one of the other ones. This is one way to add a member to an instance. Any perf nerds in here? Okay, I'm going to feel a little bit left out now. I do sometimes worry about how to do things the absolute fastest way in PowerShell, and the absolute fastest way to do things is $something.PSObject.members.add. And if you want bonus points, you can pass false to it, basically saying, I already know that this is a valid member. Don't check it, just add it. Very quick, very quick. But these are the two ways you can stretch an instance of an object. Now let's talk about creating pseudo-objects. Creating your own objects in PowerShell is easy. Just put things in a hash table or ordered. Personally, I deeply prefer ordered because it's nice when our objects show up through a predictable order, but that's just me. You do you. You can then cast it to a PS custom object, and that will actually take all of the keys and values in that dictionary and it will create a custom object with the shape of that dictionary. There's one bit of bonus points here. We're going to come back to it more in a bit, but you can actually describe what type it's going to be by giving PS type name as a special key in that dictionary. Is that a question? Sorry. Yes. The advantage of ordered is that it keeps ordered. Hash tables are not guaranteed an order. And so if you're doing anything that writes to disk or needs to be in an order, you don't want to use hash tables. If it needs to be in order, hopefully that's already obvious. You want ordered because you need it to be in an order. The writing to disk thing is just to avoid disruptions, because what you'll commonly see is something where you create an object out of a hash table, and like every check-in, the order of a couple of keys will flip. And so you'll see a git diff, and it's actually not really a change, and that's just noise. So I prefer using ordered dictionaries because the tracking cost of adding like some bit of internal logic to keep track of the order is outweighed by the benefit of being in order. Also, and this isn't pure part of talk, but you can use numbers to index into ordered. So if I just want the last item ordered to added to an ordered hash table, that's $ordered bracket -1. So lots of advantages. Only disadvantage that I see is that people are very used to using hash tables, and you have to remember to add that bracket ordered in front of the hash table when you declare it. That's a very complicated answer to get into technically, because we're not actually casting. This isn't a strongly typed object, it's a weakly typed object. And this is one of the huge wins of PowerShell compared to other languages. Most languages, you want to work with an object, you need to have it strongly defined somewhere. PowerShell does not care. Just throw an object together and you can start working with it as an object. Another easy way to create pseudo objects is going to be something like convert from JSON. You'll also get back pseudo objects when you invoke a REST method that returns JSON. So you'll be dealing with pseudo objects all the time in PowerShell, again, whether you think of it like that or not. Now, technically, PSObject stands for PowerShell object, but I think we can all agree pseudo object is a little bit more accurate and possibly easier to describe when talking to people that aren't PowerShell nerds. So when I say pseudo object, I mean PSObject, basically. These are sometimes, again, called pseudo objects by certain individuals that are trying to make the community a little bit easier. And that's because no real type needs to exist. So again, we're not actually casting, we're just creating a pseudo object, maybe containing more pseudo objects. We just need to add decoration, and then we can have real fun. So what's decoration? PowerShell objects can have any number of PS type names. They describe an object's type hierarchy. And we're going to go off into terminal for a second and demonstrate it. Get process ID PID PS type names. So it is first and foremost a systems diagnostic process, which inherits from component model component, which inherits from Marshall by ref, which inherits from object. Cool. So I have my full type hierarchy in PS type names by default. This happens to be a type hierarchy of real objects that exist, but it doesn't need to be. So in fact, I'm going to go save this and start to go a little bit off brand here. And I'm just going to add foo. Yeah, I'm going to go look at its PS type names. And now it is all of those types plus foo. Now, because I added it to the end, if I look at my process, it still renders like get process. But let's, do some more destructive decoration here and instead insert this at the first. We're going to make it a bar. Sorry, I didn't clarify. It will go down the list until it finds one to format because there is no formatter for bar, and because I still have a formatter for process, it still formats as process. But let's be a little bit crazier. Let's clear the type names. There we go. Now PowerShell has no concept of what type of object this is, although you still have the .NET method getType. Incredible, extensible PSObjects. Does anyone know another language that can do that? PowerShell is a very cool language. I did just demonstrate that we can add or remove PS type names on the fly. This is called decorating objects. So when you hear somebody talk about decorating an object in PowerShell or wanting a decorated return, they mean they want objects that are returned with specific PS type names. You can get this naturally if you're just using real .NET objects. And you can also make any object be any arbitrary type you choose. This lets us extend all objects of a type. So let's talk about extending types and pseudotypes. Add member was extending an instance. And PowerShell can extend almost any type. It does not have to be a real type, and we can extend types two ways. I would generally mostly recommend a types PS1 XML for production. You can use a module I wrote a very long time ago called Easy Out to do this. You can thank me later. But today we're going to demonstrate doing this with update type data, which is a built-in PowerShell command. There is a speed benefit to loading things with types PS1 XML. There's also some exclusivity. That is, if you try to overwrite a type that already exists, with this, when you import a module, it'll complain. Update type data, you can directly force an update. The other trade-off you have is that a types PS1 XML is not debuggable because it's an XML file. I mean, you can only do so much. But update type data is. So if you are just developing these ad hoc or want to be able to debug, update type data is a pretty good friend. So for demonstration purposes only, let's go ahead and extend all ints. And I am going to regret not copying this into slide notes, but only briefly. So I'm going to go back into my shell, clear the screen, paste that in. Cool. So now I've extended all ints. And it's sort of obvious what I'm doing here, right? I'm adding a double. So I can go one, double. And because I'm extending all ints, this is also coming back decorated. So I can double it again, and double it again. And you get the point. So I've added a convenience method to all ints in one line of PowerShell. Again, does anybody know any other language I can do this? It's like, I can again extend things in JavaScript, but I cannot extend a proper type in JavaScript because, not to get too far into the nitty-gritty, JavaScript doesn't have any concept of proper types. Everything is an improper type in JavaScript. Sort of, kind of. It's complicated nowadays. But we're not here to talk about why JavaScript is sometimes awesome. We're here to talk about why PowerShell is almost always awesome. So back to it. I already showed that we can double. So you see that worked. Also that apparently I have been public speaking long enough that I can tongue twist my way on stage without falling over, which isn't great. Let's talk about a really practical example of using this, extending Markdown. And I actually wrote this one. In fact, this whole talk was mostly ironed out this morning. True professionalism. But Markdown seemed like a good, simple example and was about 3 minutes to throw it together. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to update type data from Markdown. Again, I'm going to regret that I didn't actually copy this into my slide notes. I'm going to add a script property named HTML that converts from Markdown and returns HTML. Markdown is not a proper type. There is no .NET class named Markdown. Then I'm going to make a custom string, and I have to actually cast it to a PS custom object here. Otherwise, things get ornery. And I'm going to go add PS type names Markdown, and then I'll get back the HTML. Everybody clear on what this next demo is going to be? Cool. Now for the copy and paste portion. Clear my screen again. Cool. Added my definition of Markdown. While we're here, let's also see how we can get these back. So I can say get type data, type name Markdown, and that will show me all the different extended type information associated with a class or a type. Okay. To prove another point, I could also have this be PowerShell does not care. In fact, I'm just going to do one more of these. And I'm going to go make this member name. Get me some Markdown. And I'm actually going to make this a script method because it won't matter. And I don't want to declare my return otherwise. Okay? So you can have spaces in property method names in PowerShell. It's truly a beautiful and broken language. Now let's see if smart quotes copy and paste in nicely. We're going to find out. So far, so maybe good. I see my normal Markdown as text because if I look at its PS type names, it is still a string before it is a Markdown. Now I could rearrange this a little bit and it'll look a little bit weirder, but we're not going to do that right now. What we are going to do is we're going to get the HTML. And it's actually only figuring that out to be really clear on the fly. So I don't think this would work that easily because I don't think I can set a string value without overriding the string. Let's see now. But I could very easily create another Markdown object without that much pain. Hello, hello, kids, how do you do? Make that Markdown, gets HTML, comes back as H2. Even gives me an ID. How nice of it. So yeah, that's a pretty good, simple example of where, you could go find a .NET type just to run that extra little bit of Markdown conversion and returning the HTML. The PowerShell team could eventually maybe make it so that Markdown 2 strings to HTML or do this themselves, but until either of these things happen, you can just run these few lines of code, or quite frankly, do whatever you'd like. You could also build this sort of thing on top of something that is more flexible, like say a string builder, which would allow you to get the Markdown, edit it, update it, because one other major cool broken part of this is that I don't actually have a requirement of that type hierarchy. I can just say any object is a Markdown object now. That's kind of cool, right? And kind of broken, right? PowerShell is overpowered. All right, so there's Markdown. Now let's talk about shape-shifting objects. I really should have added a weirdness warning to this talk. PowerShell objects have one more unique capability, and I do mean unique. This is not something I am aware any other language can replicate. They can shapeshift. We've already seen a bit of this because we've been changing our PS type names, which basically tells PowerShell you are this other shape of object now. We even saw a little bit of it as we rearranged and cleared PS type names and how a diagnostics process didn't render properly. But the fact that I can change type names at any time means that I can basically say, you should be extended this way, and then the next line later, nope, you shouldn't be anymore. I can use type names as temporary storage and traits of an object and basically enable or disable capabilities. We can add new type names, remove them, reorder them, and this opens up a very unique characteristic few languages have. I can name one other language that has some aspects of this, and I apologize for the mouthful that is going to come out, but it is really important that we all know those geeky terms in case we ever get into a fist fight with C++ developers. And that is dynamic polymorphism. That is the ability to dynamically be more than one type of object. This is, again, very fancy dev speak for shape-shifting objects. So in the grand tradition of PowerShell trying to make things easier, yes, you can remember this as dynamic polymorphism if you'd like. If you end up ever talking to a C++ developer about why PowerShell is worth giving the time of day, you might want to mention this. But let's just all call them shape-shifting objects. It's more clear, right? Cool. It's also way fewer syllables. So let's go see this in action in a few crazy ways. Let's start by removing a capability. Our ints can double until we say you are no longer an int. So we did the double, and it is 1, and double, 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 and 2 PS type names, clear. And N2 can no longer double. Because we said you're not that shape anymore. And we shape-shifted away right out of that capability. This can be good and bad. But it is pretty incredible. And as we saw, double now errors. The original one doesn't. I can create a new n, then it has double again, and I can clear it. And then it errors again. Now let's make something more monstrous. And this one I actually did include in my slide deck notes, but we're just going to kind of have some fun with it. It is a follow-up to what was the end of last year's Mastering and Making Modules talk. We're going to make a man bear a pig. So let's talk about our shape-shifting man bear pig. Or rather, let's go to my slide deck here and grab the one slide where I didn't want to actually type out the code on the fly or copy and paste. And we're going to just drop all this in. And be annoyed because apparently it did not, I got to do this line by line. You're cruel. You're very cruel. Thanks, PowerPoint. This is why I'm adding a dash force after this. So, I'm going to add a note for each of the types of creature we're trying to create here. We're going to make a member called speak, which is a script method. And pig says oink. 5 other lines you didn't expect to hear in a PowerShell conversation. Bear says roar. Go ahead and get our emoji properties set up here. And again, there isn't actually a man bear pig. Like this isn't a real type, nor is there a man type or a pig type or a bear type. One other way you can mentally think of this, although it's a little bit more gauche to say it is technically accurate, is we are stereotyping objects. No actual prescription on reality. Sure, you can find a better pig emoji. I should add semicolons before this, and this is what I get for the one slide where I am hoping to minimize my copy and paste and failing utterly. I don't know what you're there. You're okay, but I don't like you. Okay, so let's see. Did I have more on that one? No, it's right into the man, bear, pig demo. So first we're going to say man, bear, pig. PS custom object. We're going to start them off as a PS type name of pig. And we're going to go ahead and add. We're going to say that you're actually a bear before a pig. I think I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, by the way. Is that better? Okay. So we are now going to insert into type name 0, man. So we are shape-shifting our object between man, bear, pig, and now finally let's actually make it man, bear, pig. And we're going to go clear our PS type, and it's actually going to be a little bit mad at us because there's nothing in that right now, because we actually didn't declare any types or properties here. We just said you're a pig, as we are wont to do to our code from time to time. So I'm going to go run through this a few other ways. In fact, this time we're going to start being man, and man, bear, pig, speak, cookie to ergo sum. And we're going to devolve a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and insert into type name 0, bear, roar, pig, oink, and man, bear, pig. Climate change is real. So yeah, you can do crazy weird things with PowerShell objects. You can treat PowerShell objects in ways that are quite beautiful and unique. You can do more with them than in any other language. And thank you for coming to my proverbial TED Talk as they open the doors. I think it's time for me to wrap up here, so let's go to resume this and get to Q&A and call it a day. Oh, come on. Shift F5 from that spot. Sorry about that. Here we go. Why? Well, you just got a taste of what PowerShell can do. Let's talk a little bit about why. It lets you fill in the cracks for bad objects. It can be convenient. It can help you work with APIs, especially ones that require a particular shape of object or set of properties to be there that would not naturally be there on the object you're dealing with. You can also save code. Like, if you're going to keep reusing the same capability on an object 15 times throughout a script, this is just another tool in your toolbox to be able to say, okay, I'm going to add a method to do this each time rather than repeat my code in each branch. Also, it's fun, and we are all here to have fun. So questions, comments, socials, any questions, I'll leave them up, but I'll also put all the socials out there. You can follow me on Blue Sky at mrpowershell.bsky.social. You can also follow me on GitHub. Start automating in PowerShell Web. You can join the Pacific PowerShell user group. You can reach on Discord, and here is my email. Okay, questions? Yes, sir.
Classes considered PSObjects as well?
Classes are PSObjects as well. They're just getting their own default type hierarchy from whatever you inherited from.
You can add member for a class.
You can add member on a thing an instance of a class. You can update type data or add a types PS1XML to extend every instance of a class. So add member adds just to one member, update type data or the types PS1XML adds to every member of a type of an object. Yes, sir?
Can you put a PS type name as a property in the JSON file and have it automatically create?
PS type name is canonically ignored when you convert to JSON. When you convert from JSON, it doesn't treat PS type name as the magical thing as it does coming in, but you can go back looping over the objects and redecorate them. Another really common approach that I'll take is basically decorating the objects as I'm getting them back. So if I'm calling a RESTful API, I will simply take every object returned and add a PS type name to it then. So really easy to do, but unfortunately, no. You can keep a PS type name sort of in a CLI XML, but it's going to come back as deserialized, which does not actually make for the most ideal world. And I'm getting to wrap it up, so I believe it's time to wrap it up. Thank you very much.